in every situation to learn and grow in wisdom. I welcome you all to the special webinar on the strategies to reduce, reuse, and recycle in pollution control. We are delighted to offer the most hospitable welcome we can. I'd like to call Ms. T. Akila, Treasurer of Helix Association, to deliver the welcome address.
Let's push towards green to keep the planet clean. A very good afternoon to everyone gathered here. I thank the Lord Almighty for graciously blessing today's event. I welcome and thank our beloved principal in absentia and the management for encouraging us to adorn every event we arrange successfully. As a student, we share love with each other. As a teacher, they share wisdom to students. As a speaker, Professor A. Alagappa Moses is here with us to share knowledge. From the depth of my heart, I welcome our esteemed Chief Guest of Honor, Professor A. Alagappa Moses, Vice Principal, Head and Associate Professor, Department of Environmental Science, Bishop Weber College. I welcome you, sir. I feel honored to welcome Dr. Violet Diabrand, Dean of Science, Head of Department Biotechnology and Bioinformatics, for being our utmost support and inspiration. We welcome you, ma'am. It's hard to shape little minds, and without our teachers, this would be impossible. I welcome all our beloved professors to this event. I welcome all my fellow student friends for showing keen interest in attending today's webinar. Once again, I welcome you.
Thank you for your words. Now I'd like to call Dr. Jasmine, UG Coordinator, Department of Biotechnology and Bioinformatics, to honor the Chief Guest with a memento. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. You don't have to be great to start, but we have to start to be great. I'd like to call Dr. Priscilla, Assistant Professor, Department of Biotechnology and Bioinformatics, to introduce our Chief Guest.
Good afternoon, everyone. I thank Almighty God for His presence over here for this special occasion. It's my great privilege to introduce our chief guest, Professor Alagappa Moses, Vice Principal, Associate Professor in the Department of Environmental Sciences, Bishop Keeper College. He had served as Principal Co-Investigator in Integrated Environmental Research Program in River Cauvery, integrated and point and non-point sources of pollution in River Cauvery from Okanagan to Bumka. He had also worked as the principal investigator in environmental assessment of Kalyan Hills using RS and GSI Tamil Nadu, sponsored by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Changes, Government of India, New Delhi, and Pudukkottai Fisherman Community Development Project, sponsored by World Vision of India. He has organized several capacity building programs in campus environmental audit and facility green campus audit for various colleges, universities, and schools. He served as a coordinator India in the project of United Board HEBA Partnership for Environmental Action, a joint project of the United Board for Christian Higher Education in Asia, Hong Kong, and Bishop Keeper College, Tiruchirappalli. His special field of interest include ecology and biodiversity, wastewater engineering, environmental impact assessment, environmental audit, and environmental management. He has the credit of having delivered several lectures in various academic forms and has organized several environmental-related conferences, workshops, seminars, and national and international levels. He has visited and participated in several environmental management programs in Netherlands, France, Italy, USA, and Thailand. He has completed courses in land resources, conservation biology, global environmental development, and environmental sustainability in Associable Institute of Environmental Studies, Mexican, USA, and watershed management in Alabama, USA. I am indeed happy to say that he has published 4 books and more than 85 research papers in reputed journals with high impact factor. He has been the guest faculty. He He has been the guest faculty teaching in National Institute of Technology of the Department of Environmental Engineering and Civil Engineering for over 5 months in 2017. We are indeed happy to have you such a person amidst us and are thankful for your presence in spite of your busy schedule. Once again, I thank you and welcome you, sir.
His achievements are really astounding. Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to invite our chief guest of the day, Professor Alagappa Moses, Vice Principal, Head and Associate Professor, Department of Environmental Sciences, to enlighten us with a speech.
A very good afternoon to the Helix Association and the members of the organizing committee of this National Pollution Control Day. Let me have the privilege of thanking the Dean of Sciences and the head of the Department of Biotechnology, Dr. Vineeth, and the president of the association, and all the members of the faculty, and Dr. Jasmine, who is now taking up the initiative in organizing this meet in the absence of Dr. Vineeth. And also I thank all the members of the faculty, those who have gathered here, and those who have joined online. My greetings to all of you. So let me thank the organizing committee of this Helix Association, the Department of Biotechnology and Bioinformatics, for thoughtfully organizing this National Pollution Control Day 2020. It's one of the important occasions that we are now observing, especially to remember all those who have sacrificed their lives just because of one of the worst disasters that we can say in the history of India, and of course one of the worst disasters in the list of the world along with the rest of the disasters. So this is the Bhopal disaster. On the same day in 1984, the early hours of the day, we had a very pathetic situation wherein over 5 lakh people have started inhaling the methyl isocyanate MIC gas, and over 3,000 plus have dead, and a lot of cattle also have been affected. So as there were a lot of catastrophic disastrous events took place on that day, and entire the country was was stand still, without having any idea to what to do for it, and so on and so forth. So therefore, that was the one of the eye-opening incident, and it was the event which made the government of India to think about what is the response by the government of India, and what is the response of a corporate sector, especially one of the companies like the Union Carbide, which was solely responsible for the event. And this Union Carbide never accepted, that they are responsible, and then they said that it's maybe a human error or something like that. So it went on well, so that's the kind of the situation happened, and afterwards, that it took such a long time for getting a compensation from the Union Carbide. The main reason being that there were no legislative provision that was available in India to tackle the situation and to fight against the United States-based Union Carbide. So keeping all this in the reality, so the government of India realized that we need to have an umbrella act. That means that before 1984, there were only 3 important acts that was dealing with the pollution and pollution control, that like the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1974, and the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. So these 3 acts taking care of all these specific issues of the respective domain. But when the event took place, the disaster took place in 1984 on 2nd December, and subsequently all the consequences, they were unable to fit in any of these legal provisions to address the issues. So therefore, what happened was they wanted to have an umbrella act. So that's how in 1986 they passed an act called the Environmental Protection Act of 1986. So based on the topic that is given to me today, that's the strategies for reuse, recycle, and the 3R principles in pollution control. So the Environmental Protection Act of 1986 mainly focuses on these issues, and it wanted everyone to realize, like what is the need for the pollution control and how we can address this. And over the past 36 years, there have been a lot of developments across the country and also in the global arena. So what we'll be doing in the next, now it's almost 3, so maybe in the 30 or 40 minutes, to just refresh the need for the pollution control and how we are responding and what is the role of individuals in that. So that's what we'll be discussing. So the reduce, reuse and recycle is the main focal agenda of this day. So if you look at the pollution control, you can see that there are a lot of actions of the human beings, the anthropogenic activity which causes a lot of impact on the environment. And each and every one of these activities, it hurts or sometimes it helps the planet Earth. But the greener living, that was one of the topic that I was discussing today with the chemistry department. So it is the one which we need to practice. So that's what is the need of the hour. So it's a kind of a sustainable lifestyle. So the greener living is a kind of a lifestyle. And this lifestyle brings into the balance the conservation and preservation efforts of the natural resources and the habitat which is present and the biodiversity along with the human culture and communities. So therefore, in terms of the pollution control, what we need to look at is what is the role of every human being on this planet Earth. So the 7.8 billion as the population, as you all know, that is having each and every one of us having our own dreams. So that was one of the theme of the World Environment Day 3 years before that, about the 7.8 billion dreams. At that point of time, it was only 7 billion. So so many billions of dreams. But we do have only one earth and we need to consume with care. So how do we consume? The resources need to be consumed. Okay, so it's more than it can provide. That means it is beyond the carrying capacity. We are consuming all the resources. So every new person is a new consumer here on this planet Earth, which adds, the per capita consumption of the individuals, to a greater extent. So there are many steps that we need to take to make sure that the consumption is almost sustainable. So if you look at this slide, there are resources, there is development. What we need is this 7.8 billion. There are a lot of the racism, color, nation, and income, and everything is there. On the other side, you have the development, which need to be regulated by a lot of legislative provisions, the policies, and the kind of the enforcement that is needed. So how do we respond? Okay, so where we stand as India, okay, we are so proud that even during 272 and 32 BC, okay, the pillar edicts of Emperor Ashoka proclaimed the protection for the plants and animals. So therefore, we are so proud that we belong to a country where we have a lot of traditions we do have. So therefore, if you look at this particular slide, it talks about on the one hand it is the 232 BC, on the other hand it is the recent past. It's sometime in 1730 and some 1485, where one of the great communities in India, in Rajasthan, the Bishnoi community, became the first environmentalists in India. Making the entire forest in the Rajasthan, in the Bishnoi community area, to be protected by every single individual, okay, the children and the women. So therefore, it was the king who wanted to clear the forest and build a palace, which was protected by the people, and they wanted not to have this kind of an activity. So therefore, what happened? They sacrificed, many of them, they sacrificed their lives, and then the king realized the need for such a preservation. So all that has came in after the 29 principles, okay, which were put forth by the Guru Maharaj. So the point here is, you can see on the below, in 1998 and 2018, the battle of Salman Khan, and then the poaching activity, and then the court verdict. So therefore, the Bishnoi community was the same community which acted sometime in 1485 and 1730. So they were the one played a significant important role in 1998 to see that the forest is being well protected. So therefore, our tradition is so great that we do have a lot of sacred groves which protects all the biodiversity. So this is on with reference to the government of, the Indian subcontinent and what is the kind of the activity in terms of conservation we do have. So all this have paved the way for the constitutional provisions to be made in the Article 51 and 48. Okay. So if that is the kind of this traditions, and you can see in the next slide that is about the contributions which were made in the international, international forum like the 1962, wherein the Silent Springs, one of the book was published by Rachel Carson, and this Rachel Carson Silent Spring was one of the book that had made the people to think, especially the Senator Henry Jackson in 1955. So he referred the book, okay, Rachel Carson's Silent Springs, which talks more about the DDT and its impact on the environment. And also the book by San County Almanac by Aldo Leopold, which spoken much about the land ethics and how do we need to have protect all the predator animals. Okay, being a forest range officer, Aldo Leopold was able to protect the predators. He quit the job that he was assigned with the responsibility to kill all the predator animals in the particular forest area, especially in the Yellowstone National Park and then the many other parts of the U.S. But still, he refused, and then he became a conservationist, and then doing a lot of activity towards the land ethics, and he wrote a book, the San County Almanac. So some of these publications have made a strong impact on the mindset of the people of the United States, especially the senators. But still, 1955, it took about 15 years for Senator Henry Jackson to get the particular umbrella act like the National Environmental Policy Act to be passed in the US. So now we are discussing about the reduce, reuse and recycle and all that, but still this particular act was the one which have made a very strong impact and change of mind among the heads of the nations in the whole world. So you can see this timeline which tells you about the first Earth Summit. Okay? So as a consequence, as a kind of an outcome of the first Earth Summit, what happened was the National Environmental Policy Act. It wanted the United Nations especially to have an organization called the United Nations Environmental Program to look into the conduct of a global environmental conference and then to plan for the future. So what happened was the National Environmental Policy Act and its provision was a landmark event in the whole of the world.
No, 1 second.
Okay, so what happened was
சார் ஸ்லைட் ஷோ போனால் இங்கே அதனால தான் பண்ணேன். இந்த 1 second.
ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணலாமா? Okay, so the National Environmental Policy Act of 1970, which was signed by the President Nixon on the 1st January, had important provisions. So our concern here is to look into how the United Nations started organizing global Earth summits. So the provision number 1 was the citizens' right to claim for a healthy environment, and it's a duty of the government to provide a healthy environment. And the second provision was to form a council on environmental quality. And this council will be headed by the President of the United States, and then later on will be having heads of every state in the US to become a member of the council. And the duty of this council is to have an environmental protection agency, and this agency will collect the state of environment information and will pass on to the President, and then they will take suitable actions regarding any kind of a change that is happening across the United States. So the point here is the first 2 provisions were taking care of the health and well-being of the entire country. And then the third one was looking at the global situation and trying to make the rest of the nations across the United States and then the entire globe to take care of the environmental issues. So the third one is to convene a global conference. So when the third provision said that we need to convene a global conference, and immediately the United Nations, they have responded, and then they started forming a separate organization called the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, and was based in Nairobi, Kenya, and it was headed by Mustafa Kamal Tolba, the chairman of the committee, to look into the convening of a first Earth Summit. So the first summit was held on the 5th June, and that's why we are celebrating the World Environment Day on 5th of June. So on 5th June of 1972 in Stockholm, Sweden was the first incident where late Prime Minister Indira Gandhi from India, she participated in the conference and made an appraisal on the state of environment of the government of India. So as more than 175 plus countries participated and made presentations, and they mainly focused on the poverty and the related issues of the poverty. And also the other issues that were discussed mainly in that particular conference, the first summit, was the desertification. So because of the over cattle population, there was a lot of pressure on the land, and then the carrying capacity was less, and the pressure was more on the land in terms of the grazing activity, and then led to the soil erosion, exposure of the topsoil, and subsequently, like the area under the deserts started increasing. Okay, so the more of encroachment of the deserts in many parts of the world, especially in the African and the Indian subcontinent. And this has led to people to think of what kind of an action plan that we can implement in the countries wherever this desertification is one of the major issues. So they have prepared draft action plans, and then they discussed, and then they said we can review this. We can implement all these action plans in our respective countries, and we can review that after 20 years, as there won't be any progress that we'll be able to see after 5 years. So therefore, they wanted to wait for about 20 years to have the second Earth Summit to be conducted in 1992. So the timeline says there are a lot of important events took place from 72 to 2012. So it was Rio de Janeiro which was responsible for holding up and to having like encouraging the rest of the nations to convene a lot of programs, especially the United Nations Earth Summits. So therefore, in the second summit, like they have discussed more on sustainable development. So the person who was responsible for the theme to be fixed for the second Earth Summit was actually the 1987 the Brundtland, Brundtland Commission, which was actually called as the World Commission on Environment Development, which was formed in the year 1983. And Brundtland was the one, the Prime Minister of Norway, was responsible solely for defining the term sustainable development with reference to the environmental context, and then making a detailed report called as Our Common Future. So based on that, the second summit in 1992 focused more on sustainable development, and subsequently a lot of other events took place as per the timeline. So okay, so you can see here, what happened afterwards, after 2020, and kind of a comparison between 1972 and 2050, the projection. In terms of the ecological footprint, from 1.2 Earths to, we have reached a level of about almost 1.8 now, and we may go to about 2.8 by 2050. And if you look at the carbon dioxide emissions, it's about 20 billion tons in 1990, and we are right now in 2020 as 50 billion tons of the captive devices. And then, we're going to face a lot of issues, like especially 38 billion tons of carbon dioxide is one of the very great challenging event, and the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change is also taking up a lot of initiatives to see that this carbon dioxide emission is going to be reduced, and then we are going to have a balance of almost 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide to be the optimum level to be maintained. So the thing is, like when we think of the 3R principle to be implemented in all walks of our life, we need to think of how we are going to make a great change, and in the particular kind of the levels of carbon dioxide, or in terms of the population, in terms of the other attributes of that. So the most concerning environmental issues, according to one of the great important survey that was conducted in India among the citizens, and based on their opinion, they have published a report in 2019. So the air pollution ranks number 1, followed by the global warming and climate change, and then you have overpopulation, pollution of water, deforestation. Then the water quality is getting degraded, and there is very poor quality of drinking water that's available. And we are dealing with a lot of wastes, and we are finding it very difficult, as the electronics and then the plastics are also playing an important role in that. In addition, you have the resource depletion, emissions, energy demand, and then the wildlife conservation, flooding. So all these are of great challenges that the entire country is facing. So therefore, what the kind of the action is being taken is the formation of the World Commission on Environment Development in 1983 by Mrs. Brundtland, the Prime Minister of Norway, who focused mainly on these three issues like the global warming, the ozone layer depletion, and then the sustainable development. So, making a review of these three, she started defining this sustainable development in 1987. So what happened was, she started, this commission was formed in 1983. In fact, there is now a custom in the United Nations Environmental Program that once in 10 years, from 1972 onwards, they will be reviewing the state of the environment and the kind of the catastrophic events took place across the globe, and then the kind of the damage that it has caused on the environment. So therefore, if you look back from 1972 to 1982, in this 10 years, there were a lot of important events took place. So for example, from 1973 to 75, there were a lot of important research articles have been published on the depletion of the ozone layer and the role of the CFCs and so on. And then slowly the global warming and its consequential effects, the increase in the sea level and the temperature and all that have been published. And there was a catastrophic event which took place in the United States, Niagara Falls, near to the Niagara Falls, a place called as the Love Canal disaster. So there were a lot of disasters, as we have discussed. The Bhopal was one of the worst disasters, like that. The Chernobyl disaster, the 3 Mile Island disaster in Pennsylvania, and then the Exxon oil, disaster sometime in 1979, and then in 1977 was the time when the Love Canal disaster took place in the U.S. Wherein about 85 plus hazardous chemicals have been identified in the groundwater because of the Hooker Chemical Company, which was functioning in one part of the abundant stretch of the navigational canal, about 7.5 mile long of the Love Canal, which was abundant. So the point here is like these were the important triggering point for Brundtland to try to define and try to figure out, what is the kind of the development that the whole country, the planet Earth is looking for. So the United Nations is looking for. So let all the 190 plus countries look at a pace of development in a sustainable fashion. So therefore, she started reviewing all this, reviewing all the papers, all the events took place in the U.S., like the Love Canal, the Exxon oil tanker accident, and the consequential super fund that was generated in the U.S. and the two important laws that were passed, like the RICRA and then the CERCLA. So these were the triggering point. I said earlier, she defined the sustainable development. So the sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. Okay? So this was the landmark definition which was proposed by the WCED, that is the World Commission on Environment Development in 1987. And of course, it is again also called as the Brundtland definition or whatever it is. Okay. So the definition mainly states that the kind of the development which meets the needs of the present. It applies even to 1987 and also to 2020. So whatever the need that we are facing, we are meeting with the available resources, with the available technology, with the available consumption pattern and the demand and all that need to be available in 2050, 2070 for our own future generations. If you look back in 1987, whatever was available, those resources and those kind of facilities, many of those were lacking right now. So therefore, in order to have this kind of greener living, and the guideline says like this, so we can lead a kind of a sustainable living. We can have reduce the throwaway, that is the waste which is being generated and released or thrown out can be reduced, and then greening industrial and business processes, and then choosing greener products, and then cleaner energy choices. These are the 5 important aspects that need to be focused on the sustainable development, and also in the 3R, reducing, reusing, and all that. So the thing is, like, if you want to have a kind of a sustainable living, then we want to have a smart growth of the population, and then having a well laid out cities and towns, and then having a well organized drainage pattern. So because whatever the pattern of the drainage, pattern of the water supply and everything that we are looking now, we are experiencing now, were well laid much before. Even in 1930s, there were places where we had all green streets and green lawns and garden and etc. and so on and so forth. So Calcutta was the first city, like even in 1870, we had a very great kind of a layout of water distribution system. So that means both the drainage and water distribution system, which the British people have introduced in India, was one of the important, well planned, layout. Which even today, right, just recently after 100 years, they just in fact they did some changes in that. Okay, so because the quality of the material and everything was so great. So the two important things that we can note from this living sustainably is the reducing the water usage. So in order to find out how best we can reduce the water usage, we need to look at the per capita consumption of the water. So there is a defined an urban average of the per capita consumption of water is available, and also for the rural and urban we have a figure. Okay, so every one of us, we need to realize and remember and then to try to reduce the water usage, for which we need to know the per capita consumption. Okay, so total consumption of water per head, or the total water that is being supplied per head in a city like Trichy or anywhere else. Okay, so some of you can unmute and you can tell me that what is the per capita consumption and how much of water is needed per head per day, right from drinking to bathing to for all activities, okay, for flushing and everything, because that's the Indian average. Okay, that's what is the one which is being supplied everywhere, every panchayats in the local rural situation, and in the corporations and in the other municipalities. Okay, so therefore only based on that they calculate and they supply. For example, Trichy city is having about 10 lakh of population. Okay, city corporation. And from the river Kaveri belt, we are getting the water being distributed, okay, pumped and distributed at a particular rate. So that's what I'm asking you, right? The per capita consumption per day. How many liters? One of you can tell me. Any guess? 50 liters, 60, 70, 80, 100? How many? 100 liters. Okay, so you can just try to arrive at a figure like how many liters for drinking and how many liters for bathing, for example. Okay, so one bucket full, maybe 15 liters. So maybe two buckets or three buckets. So it all depends. So whatever it may be the case, the Indian average, even in 1950s, 1940s, when the Water Commission made, it is 135 liters per capita per day. Okay, that is the urban average, and the rural is 70 liters per capita per day, goes up to 80. So the point here is, even in our own college campus, in many of the other situations, we are consuming more. That you can calculate by yourself. Okay, so how many liters that we are consuming and how best we can reduce that and so on. So the next one talks about the throw away. That's the main theme of the day. Like how best we can reduce, reuse, and recycle the food waste, electronic waste, and the responsible appliance disposal, and so on. Okay. So we are here in a state, like I said about the Love Canal disaster. Okay. So the Love Canal disaster, which took place in the year 1977, because of the Hooker Chemical Company dumping all the hazardous wastes along the riverbed, abandoned river stretch. Okay, so that caused a lot of serious damage. Over 85 hazardous chemicals were there identified, and what happened was subsequently, the then president in the United States was Jimmy Carter. So what he did was, he wanted to have all the hazardous chemicals from the United States to be dumped in the third world countries. Okay, so that was one of the first attempts that he made. Okay, so in economics, in environmental economics, it is called as the NIMBY syndrome, NIMBY, that is not in my backyard syndrome. So that was the attitude of the United States in 1977, 78, and 79, that they wanted to have all their hazardous waste to be dumped in third world countries, and to provide a lot of incentives to those countries, those who accept to receive their wastes. So that's how, first it was Sierra Leone in the South Africa to receive their bulk quantum of the waste, and all were dumped in Sierra Leone, and then the Sierra Leone of South Africa started, getting a lot of incentives from the United States. So like that, the even in India, like the wrecking, I mean, in the Kandla port, there are a lot of ships were there for dismantling, and a lot of agitation was there. It's a quite recently, in the past 20 years, you can see, because of the asbestos fibers being released from that dismantling activity, the Greenpeace movement started, opposing this activity. So therefore, the attitude, the NIMBY syndrome was one of the environmental economics, a syndrome which was, widely discussed, widely debated, and then the Greenpeace and such organizations, regional, international organizations, started making a lot of oppositions and agitation against this. So reduce, reuse, recycle as much as possible need to be practiced, and then we need to identify how best we can do that. So in the earlier slide, we can see in the green sports in the last Olympics, what happened was when every day the PET bottles were thrown out. Okay, all these PET bottles were collected, and then the next day it comes out as a kind of a T-shirt. Okay, so that's the kind of an recycling, reusing activity that was proposed and promoted. And there are a lot of organizations in even around Trichy that we have near Karur. We have an organization which is taking care of all this PET bottle recycling and making into fibers, making into a lot of mesh and a lot of other kind of products. So the reducing, reusing, recycling is one of the important activity that need to be looked into. And of course, food waste is another one, and electronic management. You have about 12 authorized e-waste management authorized recyclers, and about 5 to 6 dismantlers. All these group of people are being authorized by the State Pollution Control Board of Tamil Nadu. So therefore, the electronic waste management is one of the important area which need to be addressed, at this point of time when we think about the throwaway. And the sustainable material management. Okay, so here comes the materials recovery facility to be established in almost all the establishments, all the government offices, and even in colleges and many other places. There is one model which is being developed as the MRF, okay, material recovery facility, where you can have a dedicated area where you can have dedicated segments wherein you can collect, and you can have a log of all the waste that are being collected, and then that can be sent to the appropriate recyclers and upcycling also. Okay, so that's one of the things. So you might have heard about the CIPET, the Central Institute of Plastic Engineering and Technology in India. So this organization is taking care of, when we say no to plastic, they say that yes to plastic, that they collect all the plastics from everywhere, all over India, and then they try to recycle it, and even right from laying of the roads, okay, and all that is being done. And then next is the responsible appliance disposal. Okay, so this is another area where a lot of focus is being done. Okay, so after the throwaway, next comes so the next one is about the energy management, clean energy choices, and before that I think there are two more slides. 19, slide number 19. Yeah. So the greening industrial and business processes. So this greening industrial and business processes is a result of the 1994 notification, especially in Government of India, on the environmental impact assessment. So when the environmental impact assessment notification was passed in 1984, it wants every new developmental projects to get a clearance from the Government of India, from the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So in the National Environmental Policy Act of 1970 in the United States, I said there were three important provisions. Okay, the first one, anybody remember the first provision of the United States National Environmental Policy Act of 1970? So that's on the citizens' right to claim for a healthy environment. And the second one, on formation of a Council on Environmental Quality. And then the third one is on convening a global conference. So the fourth one is the conduct of an environmental impact assessment study. Okay. So it was even 1984, sorry, 19 70 in US, they had this kind of the kind of an activity which takes care of the EIA studies to be conducted for all the developmental activities. So in 1994 was a time when in India, like the government of India, the Ministry of Environment and Forest started having this EIA study to be conducted for all the developmental activities. The point here is greening industrial business processes. The draft of the EIA in 1994 says that every industry or every developmental activity for that matter should have an adequate defined environmental management plan to be implemented, and this plan will always take care of the waste management and also the greening of the campus. So they want 33.3% of the area of the campus of the industry need to be green. And it is not only the green in terms of the just greenery, maybe the grass cover or something else. They want to define the kind of the plants they're going to plant, and then the kind of the gradation they from the compound wall to the interior. What is the spacing of each plant, each tree, and all that, and then the carbon sequestration potential of each tree is to be calculated, and then you need to make a presentation on or have a summary of how much of the carbon footprint can be worked out by the particular industry. So the greening industrial business processes as part of the EAA wants every new developmental activity to submit a plan for that. So and later on, when the ISOs came in as part of the environmental management systems of the ISO 14,000 and 18,000, they want to have a defined policy on environment, and then to have implement all the necessary action plans right from top to bottom as well as from bottom to top approach. Okay. And we have a detailed green chemistry and greener cleanups, and then the waste wise usage and waste minimization techniques to be implemented. Then choosing greener products is another one. Okay, so now we are looking at the green vegetables and the green products. So there is a greater demand for that, and then that's one of the area where to have a greener living, we need to have that also. So of course the water sense projects, and then the safer household and industrial chemicals, and star rated appliances to be procured and then to be used, maybe the refrigerators or maybe the air conditioning facilities, and of course the energy and environment, the clean energy choices. So the thing is, like, we look at the 3R principle, and even now they say that even refuse is one of the R's to be added to that. So there is an over exploitation of the resources. You can see a lot of mining activity, coal mining, and then other kind of mining activity, and associated timber logging, and forest fire, and the destruction of the forests. Okay, and a lot of pollution, both the air, the point, non-point source of pollution, and the consequential effects, and then the poverty and greedy consumerism. So there is a demand. We have seen earlier that there is a 7.8 billion dreams, and you can imagine what is the dream of this. Okay, like whatever you can see from this. Okay. So there are a lot of dreams, but there is poverty, there is consumerism, which is so much of greedy consumerism. So what happened was, how to tackle all this? When the new millennium came, the United Nations, they wanted to have a kind of a detailed review of the entire status of the environment, and then they wanted to have a Millennium Conference to be convened. So that a conference was convened on the 24th of September in New York, called as the Millennium Conference. Okay? So the Millennium Conference in 2000 focused mainly on the Developing Millennium Development Goals, MDGs. Okay, there are 7 MDGs goals, and they focus, and our focus here is the 7th goal. How the ensuring environmental sustainability is focused, and the 8th goal has also been integrated with the sustainable development. So therefore, a lot of global partnerships have been established with a lot of countries in terms of transfer of technology, and also in terms of exchange of ideas, and then trying to share the resources and allocation of resources and all that. That part of it. So therefore, 7 and 8 are the 2 important goals of the MDG, which was drafted in 2000. So when the 8 goals were proposed in 2000, there were a lot of targets and a lot of indicators. So each and every one of the indicator and the targets, they wanted to achieve at least 50% of that by 2015. So when they started reviewing, what is the status of the progress of such attainment of these goals, they found, like it was not well attained. Okay, there were a lot of lag, and then they wanted to increase the total period of. Next slide. So therefore they felt, it's not changing, okay, like in the sense that the progress is not there, and then therefore they wanted to have 17 goals to be included, and then they wanted to call it as sustainable development goals. So these were the sustainable development goals, okay, 1 to 17. So each and every goal is unique in its own dimension, and every goal wants a kind of a significance. It has its own significance, and then especially you can see in 13th one about the climate action, and then it focuses on the life below the water, on the land, and of course peace and justice, and strong institutions, and partnership for the goals. Okay, so we can just read out the rest of the goals. Okay, so every goal has focus on the overall development of every country. It wants a clean water and sanitation. It wants a quality education. So zero hunger, poverty, and so on and so forth. So therefore, all these 17 goals need to be well understood and implemented by every one of us. That's the idea of that. So it's not only the heads of the nations or the country to implement such plans. Even the institutions can do it. Okay, that's what we can see from this universality. That's the main idea of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So therefore, you can have every sector, the cities, the businesses, the schools, organizations, colleges, and all are challenged to react to this. So that's what is happening now in most of the cases. So it's 2015, now it is 2020. For the past 5 years, there are a lot of organizations that have responded to it, and so therefore it is universal. And what they want is every one of these organizations that we have seen in this slide, like the business sector and schools and all that, need to integrate this into their own system, and then they try to practice whatever is quite possible by them to implement. So the universal adaptation and adoption of this, and by way of integrating that, you will expect a kind of a transformation in the community. That's what is the main focus. So therefore, what they wanted is the UNEP, along with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, they started looking at the kind of the recycling or reducing and the other kind of measures as part of the climate action to be adapted in every country, and the mitigation measures to be implemented in every country, and then to show the level of the carbon footprint reduction in the respective countries. So this is one of the strategy called as the passive environmental strategy, wherein dilute and disperse. So in 1980s, this was one of the concept, one of the strategy that was very well followed by most of the industries, dilution and dispersion. So they just allow the air emissions from the stack to get dispersed in the atmosphere, and then all the liquid emissions to be simply diluted in any of the water body. And one of the next strategy. So this was first one, dilution and dispersion, is a passive strategy, and end up pipe approach is a reactive environmental strategy, where there will be some provision in the end of pipe so that there will be some check, both here for the air emission and for the liquid emissions. And in the other strategy of again, it's a reactive strategy. There is an on-site recycling also takes place. So in one of the conditions in 1990s, before the EAA notification in 1994 was passed, what they did was, they wanted every export-oriented company in India to have a zero waste discharges. Okay, so they wanted to have an on-site recycling, and 100% export-oriented units should recycle all their waste, both liquid, solid, and everything. And then the next one is a proactive environmental strategy, wherein good housekeeping, input substitution, better process control, equipment modification, technology change, and on-site recovery. So up to the product modification can be part of it. Okay, so therefore, looking at all these kind of strategies, we need to understand the kind of the wastes that we come across in our daily life. So there are hundreds of words, like we can see here. There are it's a waste allowance and the demand, biochemical oxygen demand. Okay, then there are a lot of things are listed here. You can refer back, and then you can find how and where and what is the life cycle assessment of each and every one of this. Okay, So the life cycle assessment is one of the area which is now gaining momentum, and is one of the strategy which wants everyone to implement that. Okay. So therefore, waste is waste, whatever you call it. Take the opportunity to cut waste and increase the profit. So that's what is happening now. Like the upcycling is gaining momentum now. So we talk about the recycling, we talk about the reuse, and then recovery and all that, refusing and everything. But upcycling is one area which is lacking, and but of course now it's gaining momentum. So we need to think of where we stand, and then we need to look at what the cleaner production, okay, is being defined by the United Nations. The sense, the UNFCCC have come out with a lot of programs for the climate adaptation and the global warming and the related strategies to be implemented in every country. So according to that, the cleaner production means a continuous application of an integrated preventive environmental strategy. With these strategies applied to the process, the product, and the service to increase overall efficiency and then to reduce the risks to the human and the environment. So this each and every one, like is being quantified at every stage of its life cycle, and then they try to make it every one of these seem to be eco-friendly. Okay, so therefore always it reduces a long-term liability which the companies can face many years after the pollution has been generated. Because this is one of the things that we need to always remember, how we are going to reduce the long-term liability. So in the case of the Love Canal disaster which took place in 1977, it was over 60 to 70 years before 1977, the Hooker Chemical Company started dumping all their hazardous wastes. And later after 20, 30, 40 years, the company sold out, it was sold out and then taken over by another person, and then so all this has been happening. Never nobody thought of what will be the long-term liability for that. Okay. So it was only in 1977 when there was a torrential rain in that part of the area near the Niagara Falls and especially the United States. Okay, so they felt, okay, the using out of all these chemicals along the riverbed, and then they started experiencing that. So therefore, the reducing long-term liability is one of the important aspects which need to be part of the cleaner production, and it should be very well implemented, increasing the profitability and the lower production costs and so on, and it should lead to the more efficient use of energy and raw materials, and should result in improved product quality, and it goes reducing a lot of risks and a lot of cost benefit analysis to be conducted, and should often avoid regulatory compliance cost, because this when the pollution and the related aspects were introduced sometimes somewhere from by the CPCB, that is the Central Pollution Control Board. They wanted to have regulatory compliance cost to be one of the things, okay, in environmental economics. As an economic instrument, they wanted the polluters pay principle was introduced. Whatever may be the quantum of the waste you are discharging, you'll have to pay a charge for the maintenance of that, okay. So therefore, the regulatory compliance cost need to be avoided, and it would lead to insurance savings and a lot of other principles to be followed. So one principle is this, the precaution principle, the preventive one, and then the integration principle. These are the three important principles that, as part of the economic instrument that is being practiced in many countries. And only when you practice this, the funding agencies like the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, or the European Union, the World Bank, will support for the developmental activities. Okay? So the strategies to have a good housekeeping. So it starts from the leakage, spillage, and everything. Okay, and then to have input substitution at all levels, and then to have a better process control maximum. In the quite recent past, like a lot of automated control systems are being done in practice. So one of the lack when we look at the Bhopal gas tragedy, the disaster was there was no much of a process control. Okay, so therefore only the manual operation was there. Then they were attending to it. What is the level of the pressure? It was not, they were unable to monitor it at 2 a.m. in the morning when the actual disaster took place. So suitable equipment modification, and then technology change and on-site recovery, production of useful byproduct. Okay, so these were all some of the end of life approaches that could be possibly integrated and used in that, okay, the cleaner production. So it goes like, a lot of approaches like the motivators and the driver factors and so on and so forth, which would make the respective institutions in India, in any of the country, okay, any industries, large or medium or small, or any of the other enterprises, any of the other corporate sectors. So therefore, everyone, they are liable to respond to this kind of strategy, okay, like integration of all these practices into their own routine processes. So the role of the international organizations in this climate, the cleaner production is the UNEP is playing a significant role, and you have the Industrial Development Organization UNIDO, and then the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and Development Finance Institutions. So these organizations have defined guidelines which need to be adhered to, and those who are lacking, they will not be able to get any funds from the organization. So these are some of the flow charts which will tell you the possible ways by which you can do it. But anyway, the final idea here is to have sustainability to be achieved, and then the sustainability and its achievement and attainment of these goals are mainly by through the Agenda 21. So Agenda 21 is about set of 40 principles which were the outcome of the Rio de Janeiro's second Earth Summit, which was conducted in 1992. Then you have, of course, Factory X. It talks about, like a lot of factors have been announced, and you have a lot of environment, space, responsible entrepreneurship, eco-efficiency, cleaner production, compliance. So a lot of economic instruments have been introduced. Okay, so since 2000, okay, you have a lot of economic instruments. The whole mindset of the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change have changed, and then they have a lot of economic instruments through which they try to regulate all this. Okay, so it is the cleaner production is a journey, not a destination. So just a couple of slides, I will just close it. So this is about the sustainable development goals that we have seen earlier. The point here is each goal is important in itself. Okay, that's what we should always remember. So every one of the goal is interconnected, and then it wants every one of us, both the teachers, the students, and everyone to understand our own responsibility. Okay, like when we think of our own responsibility, we need to think of the constitutional provisions of Government of India. We have three important articles we need to remember. One is 21, the other one is 48A and 51AG. So 21 is about the human rights, and the remaining two are about the protection on having compassion for the nature and then the biodiversity. So this modern commitment of India in terms of sustainability with Article 21 is right to all this that you can see: medical care, food, livelihood, privacy, healthy environment, education and shelter, and so on. So the basics of sustainability lies here. Okay, reducing your consumption of natural resources, then production of the waste need to be reduced, and reusing items for a second life, and as many things as you can, and then recycling anything that could be reused. Okay, and refusing, recover are two additions, and there are many more other novel way of the R principles have been included, which wants every one of us to think of it. Okay, so just few 2 to 3 more slides just to trigger your mind that how much of money is being wasted, being spent towards the environmental degradation in India especially. So every year we are spending 80 billion annually. So this is the allocated budget. So therefore, since for the past 10 years, this 80 billion is spent every year, accounting about it's 5.7% of the GDP. So about 20 billion towards air pollution, 35 billion towards water, and 10 for the soil erosion, and 15 for the forest loss. So a lot of CNG conversions in Delhi, and then a lot of installation of real-time air quality monitoring facilities in many of the metropolitan cities in India, and a lot of river conservation programs, lentic and low-tick systems being protected and restored, and for which they are spending a lot of money. Okay. So as individuals, we need to realize what is the worth of an ecosystem. Okay, so every ecosystem and what the service it provides, it is listed here. So the value of these ecosystem services accounts to about $54 trillion, with a bundle of ecosystem to about $460 trillion US. So therefore, that is the worth of the ecosystem. This is the value of a tree 50 years old. When it is being felled or cut, we will be losing 116 lakhs of rupees. So if you take any organization, any campus for that matter, okay, like for example our own campus, if we take, we have the government norms is 33.3%, but we do have 60% of the green cover. And we have made a lot of calculations on the carbon sequestration potential of each and every standing tree here in this campus. And we know the carbon footprint of Bishop Deepa College campus. So as we want every one of the organizations to practice this and to have such a green practice. So therefore we want to have, like this to be achieved by joining together as a joint effort, and to realize the mandate of the United Nations and to realize the mandate of the government of India and the mission and vision of our own college, and maybe of course the vision and mission of your own department and of your own association, because you may be having your own targets and certain like kind of active action plans to be achieved in a time frame. That is your annual year plan. Okay, so therefore, in which I appreciate that you have earmarked today as being a day of World National Pollution Control Day to be observed. So, which is one of the thoughtful events. So, I congratulate and appreciate the organizing committee for taking up this effort. And I'm sure that you can take a pledge on this day that you can, every one of us, we need to conserve the water, reduce the carbon footprint, and then try to reduce and reuse and recycle the waste as much as possible. So I thank the organizing committee and of course the Dean of Science, Dr. Violet, and Dr. Jasmine here, and all the rest of the faculty members, and Dr.Vineeth and the other faculty members also coordinating here. So my thanks to every one of you, and I do not know whether we have enough time to respond to the questions. Maybe if you have any questions, maybe you can post it, and then we can send you the response a little later. Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity, Steve.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful lecture that you have given. It was thought-provoking and it was useful, and you have linked it with the vision and the mission of our department, and it was really practical. So we enjoyed, and thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. So now we are in the most interesting and important part. Let's look at the glimpse of painting and slogan writing competition held through online to create environmental consciousness among our students. Here we see the glimpse of painting.
ஷேர் பண்ணல ஒன் செகண்ட் விண்டோ ஷேர்
Stop sharing.
ஷேர் ஆயிடுச்சு.
A pleasant evening to one and all. Competitions push you to achieve more. If there is no competition, there is no progress. Though it was a very short notice, our students actively participated in the online painting competition and slogan writing competition. The real motto, the motive of this online competition was to encourage our students, to inspire the young minds, as well as to create and raise awareness, environmental consciousness among student community. Though it was a very short notice and the students were really hectic with their unit test, and they were the end semester was approaching. They actively participated. We appreciate all the participants. Here comes the most awaited moment. I'm happy to announce the prize winners on behalf of our department. The theme for the painting competition was Preserve Our Planet, and the theme for slogan writing was My Vision for Eco-Friendly Trichy. The winners of the painting competition are Yes Dhanushri of second year Biotechnology A section bags the first prize. The second You are now watching the first prize winners painting. The second prize was bagged by Yes Devadarshini of third year Bioinformatics. And the last third prize was bagged by Sabarisha of first year A section Biotechnology, and this is her painting. The slogan writing competition, the third prize was bagged by Roshni of first year Biotechnology B section. The second prize was by Yogesh Tilak of first year Biotechnology B section. And the winner, the first prize, goes to Hari Prasad of first year Biotechnology B section. Hearty congratulations to the winners. We appreciate all the participants. A flower does not think of competing blooming with the flower next to it, it just blooms. So keep improvising your inborn talents and keep cultivating new ones. Hearty congrats to everyone. Thank you, ma'am. Nothing is greater than a grateful heart. Now I'd like to call Sandhya, Joint Treasurer of Helix Association, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Honorable invited guest, Mr. Alagappa Moses, sir, respected faculty members, and my dear friends, a pleasant afternoon to you all. It's a matter of pride for me to have been asked to propose the vote of thanks on the special webinar session of a tribute to the National Pollution Control Day. A big thanks to our invited speaker, Mr. Alagappa Moses, sir, for accepting our invitation and giving an insightful talk on the topic, the strategies to reduce, reuse, and recycle. We express our deep sense of appreciation to you, sir. We are so grateful for your interesting speech, sir. I hope that all the participants of this session would have been inspired by your highly motivating and awareness creating speech. I extend hearty thanks to our head of the department for her constant encouragement. I thank all our faculty members for their support in all our endeavors. I thank my fellow students for such an appreciating involvement. I thank the Lord Almighty for His blessings to complete this session in a grand manner. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your words, and the feedback link has been posted. Will be posted soon. Okay, now the feedback link has been posted. Everybody has to give their feedback through the forms.
Dear students, we thank you for your participation. Wish you all the best. Thank you, sir.
சாரி சார், நீங்கள் ஃபுல் ஸ்க்ரீன் போட்டு நீங்கள் ப்ரெசென்ட் பண்ணால் அந்த லைவில் போகும் சைடு. அதுதான் அது லேப்டாப் கேமரா எடுக்கல. கேமரா டெலிட் ஆகாமல் போயிடுச்சு. இன்னொன்று நீங்கள் ஃபுல் டே அங்கே ப்ரோக்ராம் சார். இன்னொன்று லைவ் நம்ம தனியாக இதில் செட் பண்ணுவோம். அங்கேனா ஃபுல்லாக செட்டப்போட வச்சுருக்கோம் சார்.
கிளாஸ் ரூம்ல
நல்லா இருக்கு சார். ஒரு இன்ஃபர்மேட்டிவாக ஒரு ஆமாம் ஒரு யூபிஎஸ்சி ப்ரீ எக்ஸாமினேஷன் ப்ரிப்பரேஷன் மாதிரி இருக்குது சார். நிறைய கொஸ்டின் கேட்டிருக்காரு காம்படிட்டிவ் எக்ஸாமில். ஆமாம் இந்த கொஸ்டின்ஸ். ஓகே ஓகே. பார்த்தீங்கன்னா